Awesome. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes to let people kind of trickle in, but hopefully everyone's having a wonderful week so far and super excited to be having this conversation with Mitchell. Good to see you, Dana. How's everything going?
It's going okay. I'm really annoyed that it's cold in LA in April, but
It's
whatever.
warm in New York in April. So
Yeah, this weather is ridiculous.
yeah, sorry to hear that.
No, it's okay. I grew up in Florida, so like I get cold easily.
Right, right. I think every Californian would agree.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
wouldn't
laugh
like
at
it here.
what
Where,
how close is it there?
yeah.
Well, I'm in Canada, so in
Oh,
Nova Scotia, summer's like 4 months, and the rest of the time it's really cold.
uh-oh.
Amazing.
You would hate it.
Awesome. Great. Well, Jeremy, what do you think? Should we wait or get started?
I think you should feel free to get started whenever you'd like, and people can drop in the chat where you're dialing in from and what you're up to as we get going here. It's exciting to see everyone. Welcome to this new series.
Perfect. So welcome everyone. My name is Yvonne Liao. There's a few familiar faces here, which I'm happy to see. Yogesh, one of them, Renata. Thank you so much for coming to our creator conversations. I'm really excited to introduce Mitchell Rosenberg. And for those who are not familiar, our creator conversations is something that has been led by the creator in residences, which includes myself and Hillary, who is also on the call. And the spirit of these conversations is to really build a news creator community around what it's like to be a creator. Every quarter we've had a different focus areas. So the first quarter was really oriented around branding, and this quarter is really oriented around operations. Like we're going to try and get into the nitty gritty about what it's like to grow and manage and scale a team as a creator. And the best person here to talk about that today is Mitchell. For a brief introduction, for those who are not familiar with him, he is the founder of Now Simplified, which is an online platform designed to make politics accessible. You should be following them on Instagram. They have 125,000 followers on IG. They are prolific in many ways, but also flying under the radar and making a huge impact. And recently I found out that Mitchell is running a team of 60 people across 12 countries. Initially, I thought it was 30, so obviously my data was outdated. But Mitchell is also doing this part-time. He is currently involved in public service as an assistant legislative deputy for California Governor Gavin Newsom and as an advanced associate for the White House. So without further ado, Mitchell, hello, welcome. And
all right.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the
format... I just want to tell folks that if you hear my dog in the background, apologies in advance. He's running around.
Thanks for the heads up. I just want to give everyone a sense of the format. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk for about 45 minutes. It's just like a moderated conversation. And then the last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. So highly encourage everyone to be posting questions throughout the chat box, or save your questions for the very end, and we'll make sure to have Mitchell answer them. So without further ado, tell us about Now Simplified and how it got started. What was the inspiration? Can you tell us your origin story?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. It was an honor to be asked, and it's nice to meet you all. And I'm looking at the chat and excited to hear about all the things you're doing and where you're all from. I think, to start with just a little bit about myself, and I think how I ended up here. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. My whole life, I always knew I wanted to help people, but I just didn't exactly know how. So when I was like 5 or 6, I thought I figured it out, and I was going to work in the McDonald's drive-through because that's how you help people. You give them like their fries and their ice cream, and they're happy, right? And I really thought I figured it out. And then I grew up I don't know why it's so hard to say that I got older. When I was a few years older, I had like an obsession in middle school with Ellen DeGeneres, and then decided that's how I'm going to help people. Like, she gives people things and people are happy and she builds community and all this. And that's eventually what I went to college for, originally for television, to work on talk shows. And that's what I wanted to do. And then I stumbled into politics and kind of had this aha moment of this is how you help people through policy and change on the ground and things like that. And just full scale dove into both of those. And people for a long time asked me, why are you majoring in television and political science? What a weird mix. And now I have something to show for it and can say like, this is, the perfect marriage of the two. I think, and maybe some of you are similar, I am a lot of my friends' political friend, right? Like when something happens, they'll come to me and they'll ask me, what it means, or who is Biden going to pick as his VP, or what's going to happen here, X, Y, and Z. And as much as I love being people's political friend, I think I realized over some time that there has to be a better way for, my friends and other folks to find consolidated info and one place to go for, basic political things. Like no one's trying to make you an expert. You don't need to be an expert, and it's not actually that scary or hard to be involved in politics. And that's what I was trying to set out to do. I decided, over some time, I had this kind of general idea of how to combat that issue. Thinking like if you went right now and Googled what is climate change, you're just going to be overwhelmed, right? Like there's just way too much info. Where do you click? What source do you use? So I had this idea, and then, we all had our quarantine projects or activities. Like I thought I was going to play tennis, and then I played one day and never played again. But then I thought of this, and I didn't really think, I don't know that this is the best advice, but I didn't really think about day 2 of Simplified. I just was talking about it for a long time, asking some friends about it. And one of my friends just said, you have to just go and do it. It's the only way that you're going to figure out what's next. And I decided to trust him and just jumped right into it and decided, okay, I'm just going to start the account and start posting things and kind of see where this goes. Started it in my bedroom. I mean, it's still out of my bedroom right here. And have just been inspired by it, but also, and we'll talk about it today, but the difficulty of building something on social media, which social media just like sucks a lot of the time, and they'll pull the rug from right under you with the algorithms and whatnot. But that was really the beginning of it. And it started as a video only platform of video explainers of various political topics. So whether it was the Green New Deal or it was a new tax proposal or whatever it was, we would do 30, 60-second videos breaking down, what it all meant. And I'll get into like a little bit of the change, but I'll stop there for now and say that was really the original piece of let's make politics accessible for all. Let's not try to make them an expert. Let's just kind of give them the building blocks so that they can at least bring something to the table. They can watch a presidential debate, and when they mention the Green New Deal 30 times, they can know at least the base of what that means. And David, I'm sorry, I mean to say social media is great. So if you want to verify Simplified, we'll take it.
Now. Thanks, Mitchell, for that run through. When was this? When exactly did you start posting? And what was your feedback or the feedback from audience members once you started posting?
April 19th, 2020 was the day we kicked off. So actually coming up on 2 years in a little less than a week. Something I'll talk about a little later is how important patience is with all of this, because like you start something and you're so excited about it and you're really excited about it. So you think other people will be really excited about it. But for so long, we didn't even have 20 followers or 50 followers or 100 followers, but had to keep going, even though it was kind of painful and felt embarrassing personally to have to keep going. So that's when we started. I think right away, the reaction from close personal friends was, oh, this is so awesome. I love this. This is really helpful. But they kind of had to say that. I think the one moment when I realized we were on to something, even though we had less than 100 followers, was we did a video on the census. This was when, the census was out there and we were trying to get people to fill it out. And the video was a 60-second video on what the census is and why it's important. And I get a text from a friend's mom about 2 days after we posted it, who said, I just watched your video. looked at the census on my counter that's been sitting there for 2 months, filled it out and mailed it in. Like, thank you so much for this. And I think that was like the first, I think I was overwhelmed, like, of, oh, this, we might be onto something and this might actually work. Because even if you get one person to do something, or one more person to go vote, or one more person to bring up a political issue to somebody at the dinner table, it really made it worth it. And I think that's kind of where I set the bar of, I don't need to be moving 30 million people's votes or political opinions, but if we're moving some, I really think it's just it's like a domino effect of you talk to your friend about it who gets passionate, or you watch John Oliver and you get passionate about this random issue, right? And then you go tell people about it. So it's that same kind of domino effect.
And how long at what point was that when that moment occurred after April 2020?
That was maybe less than a month in.
Okay, and how often had you been posting?
So we were posting at the time. At the time, we were posting twice a week. So I wouldn't recommend that now. We could talk about that, but like at the time, thinking of reality and resources, and we were making videos with animations and things like that. We only had the resources, and I was working a full-time job. We only had the resources to post twice a week at the time.
And who is we?
It's funny, I say we, I mean me.
Okay.
But I think I've changed it now. So at the time, me, and we'll talk about the team, but yeah, the first maybe month was myself before I started reaching out to some folks.
And when you say you wouldn't recommend posting twice a week, are you saying you would do less or more? What would be
Much more?
Much
more.
Okay, all right. Let's continue down the story and tell us after. Like, so when did things start to like really kick off?
So I think 2020 was a crazy year in a whole lot of ways. So a little bit after we started, some of my friends who saw Simplified on my Instagram from sharing it started reaching out saying, hey, do you need help with this? And quickly I was like, sure, I'll take some help, and had maybe one or two other friends at the time who were helping me with kind of nitty gritty admin pieces, or with writing some posts, or whatever it might be. I think in the grand scheme of things, May of 2020 is when everything changed, when George Floyd was murdered. And I think there was there was an international shift in how I describe it, I think, is that people no longer just wanted a seat at the table, but they wanted to be a part of the conversation and actually understand the conversation. And I think that was a big piece of what we saw in terms of the kind of content people wanted. Again, not trying to be an expert, but to be able to have an informed debate about whatever the issue might be. And when I say like May, it doesn't mean we suddenly took off in May. We just noticed the shift and started rolling out graphic explainers, different kind of interactive pieces to try to hear people and get them get them engaged in a new way. I think in terms of quote unquote taking off, it was probably that was April. It was probably 5 months later, if I'm doing my math right, when Joe Biden picked his vice president. And at the time, I was really prepared because, he could have picked one of, at the time it was like 13 people, 13 women. So I created 13 different posts of anybody he could post. And the reason I did that is because the second he announced, we beat the New York Times, we beat the Washington Post, we beat the Associated Press, because we were ready to go with all of these different posts and got it out immediately. I think that day we gained 25,000 followers. Wow. Or something crazy in one day. That does not normally happen. But I think that was kind of the beginning of, okay, we got some momentum.
Yeah, no, definitely. And kind of flashback a little bit. How did you know that people wanted to start joining the conversation? You said like you saw a shift in audience sentiment, but what did that actually look like for you? And at this point, it's still you, right? Yeah.
Okay. At this point, me plus, maybe two pals. So before I scaled it, but it's a good question. I think the main way we realized our followers, meaning not just friends of mine. So as we started hitting even a little tinier bit of a wider audience, reaching out to us saying, can you cover X issue? And it was everything across the board, from police brutality to redlining to climate change to all of these other things. And them reaching out to us, I think, was number one of kind of the number one step of, okay, these people want, people want to dig a little bit deeper, but also go back to, historical concepts or basic concepts. And I think that outreach from other people, this means it wasn't just like my mind coming up with whatever, I wanted to write about or post about. That outreach, I think, is what made me realize, okay, something's changing here. And suddenly, and of course, like we probably all saw it if you're on Instagram or elsewhere, May, June, July of 2020 is really when all of these accounts started popping up, of infographic accounts and, all of these different ones.
Got it. So competition is fierce. How did you, so take us that post 25,000 follower juice that you got. What happened next and how did you continue growing now Simplified?
So I think after a few hours of like screaming because I didn't know what was happening, and every time I would refresh the page, it was going up. So at that point, I'll back up. A few months before that is when I started to scale the team, when I started to say, okay, I think we can do more here. We can put out more than 2 posts a week, 2 videos a week. We can kind of up what we're doing on the front end. And to do that, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but to do that, all I did was put a line in our Instagram bio that says, want to be a part of the team, email us. So it wasn't I wasn't going out recruiting people. I wasn't even putting a lot of effort into trying to find, person 1, 2, and 3, but was really open and trying to get people to come to us. And that happened right away. Also because of how crazy, again, 2020 was and how people really wanted to be involved. So we started hearing, from a fair amount of people that wanted to be involved as a writer or a designer or marketing type or whatever it might be. And those folks started reaching out to us. As the following grew, so did that outreach, because obviously more people are finding us, number one, and number two, we look more legitimate with a bigger following. So people will see us and think, oh, maybe we're something that's worth being involved in, and however they would describe it. So I think those were kind of the steps. When we started, taking off, and I'm happy to talk about this more, but you will have days on Instagram, especially, TikTok, definitely, for example, but Instagram especially, where you can gain, you can have a crazy week and gain 25,000 followers, and then you might not have a net gain of followers for the next month or 2 months. And that happens to us all the time, where we have like this big spurt and we get really high on it and we think, we're well on our way to, 10 billion followers, more than there are in the world. And, then suddenly we just plateau for 2-3 months. So I think after that 25,000 bump that happened, granted, with the election, we were posting a lot of stuff, obviously, on there, and being able to reach into different types of groups of people who aren't that politically active, but who want to vote or are feeling the pressure to vote, et cetera. And we were a resource for them.
Great. I mean, so it sounds like you had a call out. Everyone's kind of doing this on a volunteer basis. Is that right?
Yep. Everyone's a volunteer.
And has that ever been an issue? People looking to get compensated for their time? Or why do you think that you've been able to get so many volunteers to kind of work for Now Simplified?
Yeah. So compensation, that's never been an issue. I wish I could pay people. I'm not a businessman. I'm not trying to make money here, and we haven't really made money. And again, like that's not the goal. So not only do I not have money to pay people, but I'm not paid. The other folks who help me lead the team now aren't paid. And I think the way we're able to attract and retain volunteers is because we're also volunteers. We're not trying to abuse them as unpaid interns or volunteers and have them do all of our work for us. And then I also think, we all share, and everyone who's come forward, we all share this same mission of however much we're willing to put into it, whether it's a day a month or 30 days a month, We all share the same mission of what Simplified is trying to do at the end of the day. And that is what has kept people around. But in terms of issues, having volunteers, period, is so hard, because everyone, I'm sure, has experiences or done this yourself where, you know, a volunteer joins an organization, you're like really high on the organization, you want to be involved, you want to do it all, and then you kind of, you know, get your fill and then you drop out. We see this constantly. There are those core ones that are there through and through, that start their own project within Simplified, that stay. But we kind of planned for that, that fallout and that turnover rate of volunteers. And of course, because we can only expect so much of them because they're volunteers. And I think we did that from the beginning. And then one other thing I'll say about it is I designed Simplified in a way that it's for volunteers, we'll take as much as you are willing to give us, but we don't have the same expectations of you as maybe if you're joining another org. And what I mean by that is, for example, if we want to write a topic on, you know, Ukraine and Russia right now, we'll send that out to the group and let you sign up for it. So we're not assigning something to you because this might be a busy week for you with school or with work and you don't have time, and then you feel burnt out and you feel like you let us down. We let you sign up for that when you have time. And that's been a really successful model for us in terms of keeping people and in terms of the time commitment, because people always ask, the first question they ask is, what is the time commitment? Because I'm busy, because I'm doing 30 other things.
Yeah, can you tell us like what is the volunteer journey? So if I sent you that email and was like, hey,
Yep.
I want to help out with Now Simplified, like today, what does that actually look like in terms of how you onboard them, how you kind of, are you guys on a Slack or Discord? Just kind of take us through the flow.
Yeah. So something I'll give myself credit for, but that I made a huge priority at the beginning, was how important organization is. Because if somebody reaches out to you or somebody joins your group and you are disorganized, they have no reason to stay or feel that it's worth their time to stay. When they come in and they feel like, oh, I just joined a real thing, even though this is like me in my bedroom, but they feel like I just joined a real thing, then it is, you know, then they're a little more bought in. So when you email us and say, hey, I want to get involved, you'll get a response back pretty quickly with an email, a thorough email laying out every team that we have. So one of the first things I did was build a team structure on Simplified. And most of those teams had 0 people, but I figured over time we would fill them. So whether that's researchers and writers as a team, graphic design, social engagement, the administrative side, and then as we grew, like Simplified Espanol, Simplified Live, our newsletter, built out these teams. And then when you reached out, we sent you an email that had all these teams laid out in a Google form and said, fill out this Google form. Let us know what your interests are. You can choose one, you can choose all of them, but just let us know what they are. And that was a really good way to first weed people out, because probably 50% of those people never fill out the form, which is a good sign, because it's like, well, if you're not going to even follow through on that, we probably don't want you on the team at the end of the day, right? So that was a good way to kind of weed the first team out. Then once you filled out the form, you would get an email and we would set up a time to talk. And I think what's important here is we're not asking for your resume. We're not asking for your portfolio. Anybody can do the work that we're doing if you just have the goal in mind and you have the time and the passion to do it. And I say that with a caveat of no post is going to go out on Simplified without like 5 people reading through it. So I'm not worried about that piece. But I didn't want to be so picky at the beginning that you have to be some political expert or some graphic design expert or something, because then it's going to be so hard to recruit folks. So regardless of who you are, come forward, we'll set up a time to talk. That conversation was typically only about 10 to 15 minutes of, you know, I'll give you a little history of Simplified, what we're doing, what we're trying to do. You tell me about your interest or any of these teams of interest to you and your background. From there, 99.9% of those people we happily let on board. From that point, we send you an email with a rundown of what it's like to be a researcher and writer. After about a year, we put together a nice looking thing on Canva we call and I can share it, that's called like a researchers and writers memo, and then also graphic design handbook that kind of just like walk you through, here are examples, here's the process, etc. Again, to show to people, look, we are put together, we know what we're doing, take us seriously. So we'll send that. We also sent a content agreement that basically says, you know, we're all unpaid. We're not making money off of this, but any content that you do write or design for Simplified is owned by Simplified, just to protect. And I was lucky that we had a law student who would remind us all the time that she's not a lawyer and can't be our lawyer, but she's a law student on our team who recommended that. And then we would bring you on. So we'd bring you on, we would add you to whatever, yeah, you mentioned Slack. So we use Slack, which I totally recommend. We still use free Slack 2 years in, and we have zero problem. So we have all of our teams on there that people, will add you into the team, and then we'll start going from there. You can at any point add other teams. We have our general channels and other things so people can interact with one another too.
Let's talk about the editorial process. So yeah, I'm onboarded onto the Slack. I want to pitch a story idea about Russia, Ukraine. And so I posted on the Slack, presumably. What happens next?
Yeah, so all of our topics that we post about, which now are about, 7 or maybe like 6 to 10 a week, are coming from either our followers are asking for something, breaking news of like, I'm following the news and I see something and I want to put a post out about it, or come right from our team members, which is actually the most common way that they come about. So when it comes from us, I'll go ahead and send a message in our researchers and writers Slack channel and say, hey, here are a few topics we're looking to cover, reply in this thread. If you can do it, here's a deadline. So the deadline might be 12 hours if it's a super breaking news, but more often than not, it's like 4 or 5 days. We also have an idea share. It's called Idea Share channel on Slack, where anyone can throw in their ideas. So just this week, obviously there's a lot going on overseas. So people are posting in there, can we do something about Sri Lanka? Can we do something about Pakistan? Can we do something about the French elections? All of this. And we really for the vast majority of things, we're going to say, yes, let's do it. Especially if you're passionate about it and you're willing to write it, we're happy to put it out there. The only time that we don't is if we don't feel that it fits into Simplified. And we were talking about competition earlier, and Simplified is focused on policy and politics. And I want to keep it that way because there's a lot of pages that focus on other things, that focus on important issues like social justice and climate and other things. So in order to kind of keep us our own entity without having to directly compete with other people, us staying a little more narrow works best for us. So when you choose a topic or we give you a topic, we give you a deadline, when you let us know that that's done and you would reach out to a person on the team to say, hey, this is done. We then go through, which is something we started later when we had more teams, but it goes through our editing channel. And our editing channel are a series of copy editors and fact checkers. So every post that's there is read over by a copy editor and a fact checker. This also makes new volunteers feel more comfortable because it's like your chances of making a big mistake are significantly reduced because you're going to have other eyes on it. And we would be just as embarrassed as you probably would be if a post went out and had an egregious mistake. So we put it through that process. It gets edited, it gets fact checked. We would do a training for editors and fact checkers where we talk about the tone we want to use. We want to be as unbiased as possible. And we also want to be simple, right? So you don't need all these qualifiers. You don't need all these big words. You don't need all this, condense it down. We want as few words as possible while still telling the full story. Once it goes through that process, it gets kicked over to design, where it gets designed by a designer, edited by our person who runs that design team. And then I'll do, because I'm still just I need to see everything, which is a flaw, but I'll still look over everything before we post it, and then go ahead and I'll be the one who clicks share on Instagram.
Yeah. So have you kind of shared the keys to your Instagram account, or is that something you still hold on to?
Definitely have shared it for folks. What I will say, and I don't actually know the solution to this, is I've tried to empower folks on the team to post. So not necessarily post, but if you see a great post you think should be shared on our story, I'm not always available to find it and scroll through or share it. So if you see something, share it. What I will say is a lot of folks are nervous to do that because they don't want to share something that gets us in trouble, or that shouldn't really be. And there have been times where people have shared things that were just way too political for what I want, way too biased one way or the other for what I wanted it to be, because I'm trying to draw in a diverse audience. So I have shared the keys. but folks haven't necessarily jumped on that. The keys help in terms of like responding to DMs and message requests and things like that, and comments, comment moderation and things like that. That definitely is helpful there. Less helpful thus far in terms of actually getting content consistently posted out there.
And I should ask this from the beginning, but why did you pick Instagram?
So, like I said, social media is a tough beast. Based on what I wanted to do and to accomplish and the type of content I wanted to put out, Instagram just made the most sense. So if you're going to do graphic explainers, Twitter is going to be a failure for you if it's going to be more than 1 or 2 images. Facebook is going to be a failure for you, in my opinion, because of the format of like 1, 2, 3, 4 pictures, and then one says +10, and then you click on it, right? It's a little, it's not as user friendly. Same with the videos. Like I think of everything of what that thumbnail is on a Twitter feed when you're scrolling through, and when you have this vertical video, oftentimes it'll crop and then you see like a half of somebody's body. And Instagram just made the most sense for us. What I will say is the pressure that I'm sure some folks have experienced, the pressure to scale to different platforms has been present since day one and still to today. And what's tough about us scaling to different platforms, and we've tried and we've failed many times, the tough thing about us trying to scale to other platforms is that means we're developing a completely new set of content, because our content can be posted on Instagram and looked great, but we've tried to post our exact content to save us work on Twitter, and it just is a complete and utter failure. We post it to Facebook because on Instagram, it's just a button that you click and that's easy. But the reason we haven't scaled other places is because you have to make new content, which means you need the resources and the time to make that content.
And what is your vision long term? You've hit 125,000 on Instagram. You have 60 people across 12 countries. Yeah, where do you want Now Simplified to go in another 2 years?
So I think, like I said, when I started it, I didn't think of day 2. I still have held on a little bit to that energy, but at the same time, of course, like do think about, where it can go and the potential. I think that what I've learned from it, sorry, I haven't drank my coffee fast enough. What I've learned from it is that I really think that Simplified can be a one-stop shop for somebody who wants to get involved in politics. Because again, I don't believe that exists out there. As much as I wish everyone would go spend, and I wish I would do this, go spend all day reading long, complicated articles on the New York Times, the Washington Post, and other places, like that is just not realistic. And small tangent, but one of my favorite things is when someone comes to me and criticizes us by saying that, well, people shouldn't be getting their news from social media or from Instagram. And I can say, sure, in a perfect world, nobody's doing that, because there is the real fear of misinformation, disinformation. And I remind myself that, we have 135,000 followers, and we could easily post something that is completely not factual tomorrow, and a lot of people would believe it. My response, though, to these people is, if we're doing it right and we're meeting people where they are, we're doing such a disservice by just saying, okay, you can only get your news from the New York Times newspaper that you go pick up or that you read online, when you're not going to do it. So I think in terms of like the fact that I don't think that one-stop shop exists, I think that's what Simplified can become. I think that's what I want it to become in terms of an actual resource out there for folks. And what that looks like is all over. So we've explored kind of building out a web platform that's kind of like a Rosetta Stone, but for politics. But do you know how much that costs to like find a good web designer that can actually do it? I've been quoted like anywhere from like $15,000 to $70,000, and we have a budget of like Mitchell's wallet, which is not a big wallet. Like I'm not making an income from this, and I'm a government employee. So that's an idea. We did launch Simplified Espanol, which we're really proud of, because we wanted to hit this other audience. So we do our posts also in Spanish. We launched Simplified Live, where we have had, dozens of members of Congress and different celebrities and cabinet members and other folks on to talk about political issues. And the reason I say this is we've found all these ways to do these free things, and there's all this pressure to scale elsewhere. But I think that pressure is overrated, and the need, the quote unquote need to scale elsewhere is overrated. I think if you're doing what you're doing well, keep doing it, because I do know if one day we have 250,000 followers, 500,000 followers, it then will open doors to be able to go somewhere that might have money that can help us. But right now, I think I would do a disservice to our main kind of core if I took a lot of energy away and hurt the Instagram to try to go build this web platform that no one might visit anyway. And I think the future is definitely TBD, but I think those are some ideas that we've floated, and it's also scary. Like I don't damn know how to do this. I don't know where I'm going. I'm not a businessman. Like I wish I could go walk into Google and say like, hey, will you buy this from me? But I don't know their address, like, so it's tough. And right now I'm like keeping the passion through it, but it gets frustrating at times, of course.
Yeah. Well, how much time do you feel like you're spending in your week focused on Now Simplified in addition to your full-time job?
Yeah. I think it was different. So originally I was spending, probably like 5-6 hours a day just trying to build like the basic building blocks and the infrastructure and the email address and the website and all this stuff and the explanations for folks. And then also I was writing all the posts. As I've been able to scale it, my time has been able to decrease. So I spend most of my time now on the admin side and kind of on the strategy side, and then also the editing side, versus the actual writing a post every day or designing a post every day. So I was able to scale that back a little bit, but I still spend, a few hours at least a day doing it. What I will say though, to be honest, is I often run into I don't know what to do right now for it, because again, like we're saying, I have these big ideas to scale it, but I don't actually know how to start those. So what I've done for myself is I'll focus on a small building block at a time. I'll focus on let's try to run an ad on Instagram and see if we can build our following today, and see where that can get us. Or let's write a pitch for a podcast because I want to and it's in my mind. Or let's go try to get more newsletter subscribers, things like that. And those small building blocks, because I do really believe that as we build up this base on Instagram and this audience and this trust and this reputable name, that we'll be able to grow from there.
Awesome. Just a caution for those who just joined. You could please mute yourself.
I hear myself.
Awesome. So I'm going to actually segue very quickly because I know there's some audience questions, and I just want to make sure we have plenty of time for people to ask more. Feel free to chime in the chat. But Samya, I'm sorry if I slaughtered that, but do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes. Hi, Mitchell. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So it's Soumya. It's fine. I mean, it's difficult for most people to say. So I just wanted to understand, how do you deal with the changing Instagram algorithm? Because now they're prioritizing reels, and people don't get to see posts and images as much anymore. So, when you said social media is a beast and it's a difficult beast, which it is, and when you picked Instagram for images, but now people don't get to see images, how do you sort of deal with that? Oh, sorry, my camera was off.
That's okay.
It's a really great question. And yes, when I say it's a beast, when I say jokingly, I hate social media, it's like, this is why, right? Because I get it. They are doing their jobs and they're trying to improve their platforms, and they're also trying to root out, things like misinformation, disinformation, which I think then impacts us, even though we're doing it right. We're posting about controversial issues. I was listening to a webinar the other day about Facebook ads, and there's a new change to those where you can't do as detailed targeting. Like I used to be able to target you because you watched Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, and I can't do that anymore. And how they described it was every few months, the rug gets pulled out from under you, and you kind of have to start fresh. So what I'll say is we've always rebounded but it does, you find these lulls of time. So we might be doing really well with a certain type of post. So like with infographics and images, the algorithm changes in some way. It might not be announced, but like you can kind of feel it, right? And we kind of take a step back when we see this lull and think about what's next. So when all the attention went to Reels, so I'll back up. When we started with videos, we did IGTV, 60-second or less videos. After a period of time, we realized that IGTV, like as much as I wanted to do videos and it was my vision, people weren't watching them. People were way more interacting with posts instead of videos. I made up the data in my mind that people wanted videos, not posts. And that, from the data we ended up getting, was backwards. So we switched to posts, basically for all of it. When the pressure switched to Reels, and this is obviously after TikTok is already out there too, I was in the same place of like, I don't have the resources to start creating videos again with where we've allocated them. What I started to do though to test it, which is legal, is taking things like, if you go to our page, you'll see a lot of like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris talking on, like giving a speech, right? We'll take a clip of that speech of like a big moment. I'll caption it with something that maybe sounds a little clickbaity, but it's true, of like Joe Biden, slams the NRA, for example, like he did yesterday. I post that and kind of see how it performs on Reels. I've done that with like a news clip where it's gotten 500,000 views, and it took very little work from us, and it really increased our reach to people. So I think what I'll say is the algorithm changing is really difficult, but if you can try to find creative ways to capitalize on it because everybody else is, try it. And even if that reel, we've posted some like really bad reels, like poor quality, not great reels, but we did it to try to see if it would work. And even though it was a bad reel, it still got, 75,000 views because we're taking advantage of the algorithm there.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Renata, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I was wondering, Mitchell, have you received any blowback in your paying job from anything that you've done for Simplified, or have you, the opposite, gotten any positive reactions?
It's a great question. So from the get-go, I was really careful because this was obviously a political page and I work in politics. And I'm privy to information that might not be public information yet, right? Especially through the pandemic, with all the things California was doing and before I started with the White House. So to answer your question simply, no, I have not gotten blowback, but I think that's because from the beginning, I went to our legal department in our office and I said, I want to do this. Are there any flags? And the answer overall was no, especially because at the time, like I wasn't starting a business, I was literally starting an Instagram page. So as long as I wasn't violating any sort of confidentiality, no. And then during the Biden campaign, they reached out to us and said, hey, we want to do a post with you, which I like screamed because I'm a political nerd and that man is on my wall. And then when they came into the White House, they reached out to us and said, hey, we want to start, we'd love to do lives with you and posts with you and things. And from that moment, I kind of knew, okay, if they're partnering with us, like there's trust. In any post we did with the White House took weeks and weeks to get approved through all of their, obstacles. So no, I haven't gotten any blowback in terms of that. There have been folks on our team who went and took jobs who then were no longer able to work with us because it was potentially a competitor or a conflict of interest. But directly from mine, no. And I have been really careful because there have been times where I know something from work that I would really love to post on Simplified because I would break the news way before anyone else. But of course, I'm not going to do that. And was able to think long term about that.
Interesting question. Judith, you also had one, your hand's raised. Feel free to ask away.
Thank you so much, Michael and Yvonne. It's fascinating. and your mission, Michael. Thank you so much. I was wondering, and hello from the border, from Juarez, Mexico. I was wondering how, what kind, if you can explain to us, what kind of profile are your volunteers and how do you find them?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So like I was saying before, 99% of them have reached out to us because, and this is advice I've given other pages trying to build their teams. Be open about it. I put in right in our Instagram bio. If you want to join the team, email us, and people reach out directly to us. Our team, like Yvonne mentioned, is now about 65, 70 people across 12 countries that speak 15 languages. And I am the only one who actually works in politics, which I think is so fascinating since we are a political page. But what I love about that is that that's what makes us, I think, a good page that is relied upon and also relatable to people across the board, because we have people in the sciences, in math, in visual arts, and performing arts. Our director of content is an actor who had to leave us because he's on Broadway. Like this is, I think that really helped us because these people are coming to us saying, saying, hey, my friends who I'm hanging out with on Friday night are really confused about this. We should do a post on this. And that kind of helps us be relatable. When we started Simplified Espanol, we were trying to reach out to a different group of people who can help us write in Spanish, translate our English to Spanish, etc. And it was started by a woman from Argentina, and she helped us kind of raise that profile and start getting folks out there. So be open to team members coming to you, and also try to recruit from a broad array. But if Simplified was only a bunch of political nerds like me, I don't think it would be what it is today.
Joanne, you had a great question. Do you want to ask it?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious, what made you decide to put a shop section on your site? Is that, I don't know, is it more from a money standpoint, or is it more from a hoping to engage your audience in that way?
Or both?
It's a good question.
Or both.
A money place. So it obviously costs some money to do what we're doing. So we pay for example, Canva, which another hot tip, like use Canva if you don't need to be an expert graphic designer to do what we do. We pay for Canva, we pay for Google Drive, like a business one. We pay for our website domain, we pay for our email addresses. So although it's not a massive amount, like I was just losing money that I was putting in, that I couldn't recoup. So we thought, why don't we try to do a shop of some like relatable content, kind of based off, if any of you know Crooked Media, they have a famous sweatshirt that just says call Congress with the number. And I love that. And like, it's just a messaging thing that, people who care about it will wear. So we decided, hey, let's launch a shop where 100% of those costs will go back into what we're doing. To be honest, we have made virtually no money from that shop. We made some, mainly from like friends and family and, us buying some things. But that was really a way to try to get some money in that we could then, cover the operational costs.
I had a question, and also please and feel free to post your question or raise your hand on the Zoom call. We're definitely into the Q&A portion of this talk. But when you were talking about partnering with the Biden administration and the obstacles that they had presented, can you tell us what that looked like from your standpoint and what was the final product?
Yeah. So we were reached out while they were in the transition about like 8 days before the inauguration by the incoming digital partnerships team, which is in the White House's Office of Digital Strategy. That digital partnerships team entire job is to go find influencers, celebrities, organizations to go do things with online to try to reach a wider audience. Again, after I was finished screaming that they reached out to us, we started talking. We had a Zoom call and talked about some ideas of what we could do. then developed a relationship where they do this with pages where like they would send us embargoed information on a policy announcement that the president would be making 2 days from now. That hasn't hit the news yet, but that's so we could be on top of it, have a post ready to go, which of course, and again, like we really do try to keep our stuff as unbiased as possible. So our posts don't say President Biden is saving the world. Our posts say President Biden announced this policy and this is what this policy does. And that's up to every page and, and how they want to do it. But they would send that to us. So we would be ready to capitalize on that. And then we are, right there when we do it. So what we would do is we would write the post. We would send the post to them. They would read, make edits, make suggestions. We would respond to that. And then it would go to their designers in the White House. The White House designers would design that post using their colors, their fonts, etc. And then I don't know all of their back end, but it had to go to their policy shop, which takes time. It had to go to their legal shop, which took some time. And then it had to go to their like political strategy and messaging. And everyone needed to basically make sure that we were checking all the boxes there and that, we weren't doing anything that could get them in trouble, at the end of the day, or say anything that's wishy-washy. So that was the process there. And then we ended up doing a weekly COVID update with them, which we would actually design those, but they were the same. They were the same format every week, and those would get approved through their folks.
That's super fascinating. And when in that context of the partnership, were there like community disclaimers just saying like in partnership with the White House, or was this something that was
Yeah, so the posts would say, if you went and looked at them, they would say, we teamed up with @White House to do X, Y, and Z. The White House sometimes would, sometimes wouldn't, and we can't control that, would share it, but it would be both of our usernames on there, both of our logos, literally the White House animated logo on the bottom of the post. And we would do that. If we were doing like an Instagram live, which we've done with some folks at the White House, same thing. It would be the White House is teaming up with Simplified, or Simplified teaming up with the White House to talk to you all about climate change or whatever it is.
And how did the community react like when they saw this type of content?
So first, like my mother freaked out, and then my friends and freaked out. And then I think it was, again, it gave us that legitimacy that I think we needed at the time. Like if you go to our page and you see that we worked with the White House, like it gives us a sense of legitimacy and that we are a real organization there. And I think that, that helped us just continue to propel, and like, you're damn right, we capitalized on it, and we shared those White House posts constantly to just try to hit as wide of an audience as possible.
Awesome. David, you had a question. Do you want to jump on and ask?
Not really a question. It's just a thought that everyone should be thinking about what's their White House, like who's the super influencer in your space so that they can get that sort of boost too, right? Like, because I think we so often think you have to do it by yourself and you have to carry this whole load and et cetera. But that obviously helped you all bootstrap very, very quickly. And I don't think people spend quite as much time thinking about, kind of super commenting, power light, sort of being in the mix with other influencers or other sort of major entities in their own space. So they're just a thought, really.
Yeah. Would you agree?
And I would just say to what David said is he's completely right. And the reason we grew was from collaborations with other folks with similar audiences. So we did, for example, some like live or Instagram video games with celebrities like Bobby Burke from Queer Eye and Emily Hampshire from Schitt's Creek and Aubrey Plaza. And those helped us grow a tiny amount, even though they had millions of followers. And what really helped us grow was collaborating with pages that might have 5,000 or 10,000 or 1 million followers that have a similar audience. So if you know the page that used to be called So You Want to Talk About, that's now called So Informed on Instagram, and you go to our data, I think 65% of our followers also follow that page, which is a huge amount. When we were doing posts with her page, her name is Jess, when we were doing posts with her page collaborations, we could see anywhere from 100 follower growth to 20,000 followers. So I really I really recommend doing that piece. And you'll see if you go to our page, like we're starting to do a ton more collaborations because we kind of stalled in terms of growth, and think that this is a really good way to do it by getting seen by other people who already have an innate interest in politics, social justice, etc.
Fascinating. And did you ever invest in any paid marketing campaigns?
So we just did our first one, not a big spend or anything. And like, again, this is Facebook Business Manager and Ad Manager it's like kind of a beast in its own, and figuring out how it works and what the right buttons to click are. So I spent a lot of time on like YouTube tutorials of, trying to learn those pieces. So we recently put $500 into an ad that wasn't boosting a post, but that was an ad that said something like, we stay in the know so you don't have to, politics simplified or something like that. And we saw really successful reach from it. I don't know how successful our follower growth was from it, but it was clicked a bunch of times. It was seen by a lot of people, and we targeted it. So fun fact, 83% of our audience are females, because men think they know everything. So females follow us, and we targeted that ad specifically based on what our existing demographic is to only women in the United States, 18 to 34, which is our biggest subset. And we're successful, I think relatively successful there, to the point that we want to do more, and we want to try again. If we can find the money to do so, we'd love to keep boosting to see what's successful, trying different types of ads, and seeing what will bring people to us.
At this stage, what are your KPIs, your key performance indicators? Is it followers? Is it engagement? Is it likes? What are you really paying attention to when it comes to growth?
Yeah, so I think, and not everyone agrees on this, right? Like a lot of people will say your followers don't matter if your engagement is really poor. I agree with that for folks who can see your engagement. Now that, and this sounds like I'm sleazy, I'm not, but like now that you can hide likes on Instagram, we might have a post that just tanks, right? Like oftentimes we'll do posts about foreign policy because it's still really important, but it'll just tank. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, and shouldn't, put the message out there that this is an important issue. So now that you can do that, it gives us a little bit of a buffer to like keep covering important issues that might not do as well. Whereas folks can see the followers, and most people, or a lot of people, will take that as a sign of success, right? Like, I'm going to follow this page because they already have 150,000 followers. So, I'm going to kind of join the club there. I also pay a lot of attention to impressions, also because those are consistently our most impressive numbers, which then I'm able to go pitch to somebody about how, we're successful because not we got 50,000 likes on this post, but that in the last 90 days, we've had 4.5 million impressions. And that's the number that I'll use the most in order to kind of prove legitimacy, followers and impressions, and building on that.
Cool. One last question, and I'm going to let you go. Have brands reached out to you? And how have you handled those type of conversations?
So I'm trying to think. Some folks have. So we've done some paid promotions on our platform from companies or pages coming to us. So we haven't reached out proactively to brands or companies in terms of partnerships there, but they've come to us. Most of that was were teams that were like a new political page that wanted to get the word out there, and they would reach out to us. We would throw together a post for them, and we would charge them appropriately based on what that was. So we have been able to make a little bit of money from those ads. We've done a few. We just did one with Universal for a documentary, and they reached out to us because it's a similar audience. One thing that we've really tried to do, and I'll keep it short, is just keep all of our posts maintain kind of the natural feel of them, because I don't want you who already love our page to think, oh God, what is this? Like, it's just a promotional page and whatnot. So we've tried really hard to, if you come to us, like that documentary that came to us, it's an inspiring story about like social justice and political justice 30 years ago. we capitalized on that and made it feel like a natural post that we would normally do, but with a plug to go watch the documentary.
Nice. And how much did you get from that post?
The universal one, so we did, it was like a post, 3 stories, like in our link tree, in our like a link in our bio. I think we charged $1,200 for that, which some people say is way too little and some people say is too much. Typically, if we're doing like a post and a story, it might be like $400. We're trying to keep it low because any money is great right now. And you know, we don't want to scare people away, but it's literally me behind my computer guessing what might sound good. So less sophisticated than one might think.
It all looks very profesh from the outside, which sounds like is the key to all of this. Thank you so much, Mitchell, for your candor, sharing so much hard-earned advice and lessons learned. And congrats again on growing this baby. It's been short of 2 years or just 2 years now, and it's incredible what you've been able to build. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you all for joining us. Mitchell, it's been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks all.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so I think Charlotte.
Did it?
We did. I was successful though because Hillary helped me.